I don't know about you, but I love video games. If you ask me, there's no better feeling than picking up a game for the first time and then checking the clock 5 minutes later to find out that 7 hours have gone by. You haven't moved an inch, your legs are totally numb, and you could easily do 7 more because the game is just that good. Maybe it's all about the gameplay, and with each passing moment you get closer and closer to being the very, very best and taking down that boss that keeps whooping your ass. Or maybe the story has reeled you in with great writing, performance capture, and characters that make the world feel like a real place. Maybe, if you're really lucky, it's both, and every moment is like a gift from the gaming gods as you uncover more of the story and work your way through fight until, all of a sudden, it's gone. You've reached the end. There are no more mysteries to uncover, no more enemies to beat, nothing left. The credits, some music, and you. Of course, the world wasn't real. It was always just a game, and you knew that, but even so, in your time playing, you felt as though you lived in that world, got to know its inhabitants, built a home for yourself, and maybe you even fell in love. And now, after hours spent doing all of that, it's gone. A recent example for me of a game which made me feel this way is Baldur's Gate 3. I finally wrapped up on my first full playthrough a couple of weeks ago, and as the credits rolled on that sunny Saturday afternoon, I felt this wave of emotions wash over me as the credits rolled on screen. Sure, I was proud to have finished the game so I could cross it off my backlog, but the much stronger and borderline overwhelming feeling I had was sadness. Even though I got what I would consider to be a good ending, I was still left feeling a little bit somber. Now, this is nothing new for me. I've known for a long time that finishing things I really enjoy and care about makes me feel down. I've watched friends the entire way through more times than I can count, but every time they leave their keys behind to go for one last coffee, I can't help but feel a little glum. That said, I've never really thought about this feeling as much as I did when completing Baldur's Gate. So, join me today as I talk about games and why completing them can sometimes hurt like a bitch. I think step one in working out why it hurts so bad is narrowing down exactly how it feels to complete games which you truly love. It's not any single feeling, so let's go through each one to work out what's causing the hurt. Now, according to actual science, completing anything is supposed to make us feel good. Brains are pretty much hardwired to release dopamine when a task is completed or something is ticked off a to-do list. You know why so many of those to-do list apps have a nice animation or sound effect when you complete something? It's because that makes your monkey brain feel good, so you'll keep coming back to use the app and complete those tasks again and again. According to a whole bunch of articles, but in this case, The Science of Accomplishing Your Goals by Ralph Rybak. La-dee-da, citing a psychological study in a video game video, you pretentious Anyway, finishing a task releases dopamine into the brain, and we all know that dopamine makes you feel oh so good. It's the reason why after a really productive day, you feel great and accomplished, and when you sit around doing nothing all day, you feel even more tired than you did before. It's also the reason that starting the first task of the day can feel impossible, but after you've completed 3, starting the 4th is easy. Dopamine not only comes from motivation, but it also fuels it, making it easier to complete more tasks after you've completed one. You can kind of see this as a snowballing effect. You complete something and it gives you some dopamine, which makes it easier to start the next thing and get more dopamine, etc, until you're on a roll. Now, this entire dopamine part might seem like it goes against what I'm feeling when I complete a game, but I'd actually argue that it helps explain part of the reason why I feel so shitty. So, imagine that snowball is going and I'm having a great time completing quests and wrapping up storylines. My dopamine levels are continuously being topped up with each completed task, and it's immediately being used to fuel the next one. Then all of a sudden, the final task is complete and there's nothing left to do. That cycle of completing a task, being rewarded and being excited to complete another one has come to a screeching halt, and since there are no more tasks to complete, my dopamine levels are draining back down to normal at an alarming rate. So my theory with my high school level education is that part of this awful feeling is a come down from that high of the dopamine cycle, and that's not necessarily feeling bad, but more the absence of feeling good. Now, I don't believe this is the entire feeling explained, but I think it's a pretty good reason for part of it. My brain is realizing that this game that's been feeding it a steady stream of dopamine has now come to an end, and it'll no longer be bathing in the feel-good juice from this particular tap. Now, this theory kind of falls apart when you realize that this feeling doesn't happen when I simply stop playing for other reasons. I mean, the game is pretty long, and I for sure didn't play it all in one sitting. Every time I stopped playing, I didn't feel so awful, otherwise I probably wouldn't have kept coming back. That said, I'm still going to take into account as, even though the reward cycle ended every time I stopped playing, I knew the end was permanent when I saw those credits, so it makes sense that the final stoppage would feel the worst. Now, there is another part of this task completion reward cycle that I'd like to touch on, and I think we've all been playing something and eventually you get to the point where you're kind of chasing the end. You're still enjoying the game, sure, but you've been playing it for so long now that you kind of just want it to end, so you can jump onto the next thing before you stop enjoying yourself. I was feeling a little bit of this in Baldur's Gate. By the time I reached Act 3, I was a little bit overwhelmed by the size of the city, the number of side quests, and how much there was to do before I could wrap things up. I do feel like I rushed this final part of the game a little bit, and I think that contributed to me feeling so shitty once it was over. Instead of taking my time and savouring every moment and working out every mystery and uncovering the entire map, I blazed through Act 3, and even though I completed every side quest I could find, I still feel like I could have given the game my full attention just a little bit more. So now when I finish the game and there's no real reward for completing it other than a Steam achievement and crossing a row for spreadsheets, I'm left wondering what I was racing towards. Sure, I'm now free to pick up something else, and I have. Alan Wake 2 is absurd in all the right ways, and I can't wait to play more to see where that bizarre story goes. But after completing the game and finally reaching the goal that I was rushing towards, I'm left feeling a tinge of regret. Regret that I didn't listen to every line of dialogue and instead read the subtitles and skipped through those when I wasn't interested. Regret that I'd had music or a podcast on the second screen whilst walking around instead of listening to my party chat to each other or exploring every nook and cranny of this world. But most of all, it's regret that in my entire life I will only get to play this masterpiece of a game for the first time once, and I didn't give it my all. I got so obsessed with the horizon that I failed to take in the beauty of the path in front of me. Now, this sort of desire to finish a game isn't something new. Recently, I played Resident Evil 4 Remake, and personally, I think that game goes on just a little bit too long. Once I reach Act 3 on the island, I'm sick of landing headshots and spin kicks, and I just kinda want the game to be over. When I completed that, I was glad it was finished, but here, I felt guilty. If I was to offer one piece of advice in this entire video, it's to savour the games you're enjoying. If you feel like they're taking a little too long to get to the end, just remember that once it's over, and you'll never be able to play it for the first time ever again, even if it does take too long to wrap up. Make sure you enjoy the full journey so that when you get to the end, you have no regrets. The other aspect of this feeling, and the one that I feel is the most intense, is a feel of mourning, like someone close to me has died. Now this is a little bit dramatic, and when I'm saying this, I'm not acting as though finishing a game is the same as losing a loved one, but the type of feelings that I get are the same. It's a lot of sadness mixed with a little bit of anxiety. Every mention of the game for a short while afterwards makes me feel a little bit choked up as I recall the good times I had playing it, and then realise I'll never experience that for the first time again. Even if the game isn't a person that I knew and that's now gone, that first playthrough is something I will never experience again, and even if I can go back and play it as many times as I like, it'll never be the same. I'm well aware that I'm not the first to make this startling revelation. There's literally a thread on Reddit every single day asking what game people wish they could forget so they could play again for the very first time. But aside from the experience of that first time playing, I think this mourning feeling has something else to it, and that comes down to the characters. If something has great writing and lovable characters, you can't help but get attached. Part of the entire reason why games and media put a focus on making audiences love certain characters is to keep them coming back for more. If the Avengers movie featured a bunch of people we'd never met before as the main heroes, no one would care. I mean, Marvel are quite literally struggling with this exact problem right now, where their most beloved heroes have left, and they're struggling to get people to care about these new characters that we don't really know. So, going back to Baldur's Gate, where the character writing and performance capture are some of the very best the industry has ever seen, is it any surprise that basically every character you spend a lot of time with, you can't help but get attached to them. Every time you open the game, they're there waiting for you, they talk to you about what you've been through together, give you their thoughts on what you should do, and you can literally even fall in love with them. So now, you've got to the end of the game, that just stops, there's nothing left to say, no more conversations to be had, no more adventures to go on, it's all over. Honestly, I think the fact that I got what I would consider to be a good ending made it hurt even more. In the world of the game, these characters' lives will go on without me, and I'll never see how their stories really end. The romance that I spent hours cultivating, I'll never get to see the endgame of it, and if my character and them get their happy ending, hell, speaking of my character, I'll never get to see the full end of their tale. Now obviously, I know that once the game is over, the story ends, the characters aren't off playing without me, but the writing is so good that you can easily convince yourself that these are real people. There's a word for a unique feeling that gets posted on Reddit a couple of times a year that I feel describes this feeling perfectly, and that is sonder. This is a realization that every person around you has a life of their own that's as real and full as your own, and that you're only the hero of your own story. Even though, in the game, you are quite literally the main character, these companions convince you that they have lives of their own, so once you stop playing, those lives will continue, those stories will continue, and you'll never get to see that because your part is done. So coming back to this mourning feeling, I think this is a major part of it. No one is dying, but to me, the characters in the game might as well be. I'll never see them past this point, I'll never see their stories end, and it just sucks. I'm sad that I'll never see them again, the anxiety creeps in as you come to terms with having to move on without them, and the same can be said for the game in general as well as the characters. I loved my time playing the game, and every time I opened it up was a treat, and now it's over, and I have to keep going through life without the joy and comfort that this game brought. So now we know exactly what this feeling is and where it comes from, what can we do about it? Whilst researching this video, I realized Daryl Talks Games had also made a video similar to this over 2 years ago, and you should absolutely check it out if you're someone who gets these sorts of feelings after playing games. He's for sure way smarter than me and uses actual studies in his videos, so be sure to check him out in the description. However, one thing that I took away from this video and that I wanted to talk about was the title, Post-Game Depression. This got me thinking about Avatar and post-Avatar depression and what post-blank depression really is. The reason we feel so awful after finishing a movie we really love, a show we really care about, or a game that was just so good is because it's over. The experience brought us so much joy, now we're finished, we're left wondering, how do we go on without it? But the real way to get past this feeling and bounce back is to remember that age-old quote from none other than Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. It's okay to feel sad that something you love has come to an end, that's just part of life. The reason it hurts so bad is because it meant so much. It's just the price of caring, and that's all part of the rich tapestry that is the human experience. I think the best part about starting this backlog project and making the months in review videos is it allows me to process these feelings and channel them into something productive that will stay with me forever. Every game I complete, I write a short review for it, and when making those videos, if something meant a lot to me like Baldur's Gate, I expand on it to fully encapsulate my feelings. Then once those videos are finished, I can come back to them whenever I want and in some small part relive the good times of those games I enjoyed so much. Even though I can never go back and play these games again for the first time, I can look back on my notes from playing them and remember a little bit of what it was like. So to wrap up, I'd like to tweak that Dr. Seuss quote in a way that I can almost certainly say has been done before. It's okay to cry because it's over, but smile when you remember. I'd highly encourage everyone to do something to remember the experiences that meant the most to you, whether that's writing down your thoughts on your favourite games, talking about them on social media, or even making videos about them. It doesn't stop the hurt, but once the hurt fades, as it always does, you're now left with a great way to remember the good times and make sure you never forget why it hurt so much. Thank you so much for watching. I know this isn't like my usual content, but after I finished Baldur's Gate 3, I felt like I had to make a video about how it made me feel. Because obviously there aren't enough videos about Baldur's Gate 3 out there. Videos like this are really a lot of fun for me to make, so I really hope you did enjoy because I'd love to do more of these in future. And lastly, if this sort of feeling hits you too, and you'd like a system to help you remember things better so that it kind of takes a bit of the sting out of it, then be sure to check out this video here on how to organize your gaming backlog, where I provide a full template that you just fill in with your own games and experiences.